Okay, this is going to be a very quick video. In this video, we're going to create our first command. It's going to be the clear command. Now, let me go ahead and tell you this. We're not going to be able to test this command out yet by the end of this video. We're going to get to it in a few minutes when we create the command manager. But let's go ahead and create a very simple command, okay?
All right. So let me jump to the commands folder again. We'll add a new class, and this time we'll call the class command clear. For the clear command. So here we have our new class. We'll do the same treatment to the namespaces.
Get that dot out.
And one dot remaining. Yep. There we go. All right, there we go.
Now let's go ahead and make sure that we are deriving from the command class.
So we need to go under the command class definition, say that it extends command.
Okay.
And then once inside of command, what do we need to do? Well, we need to override the process method, and we also need to address the constructor. Since we no longer have a default constructor back in command, we need to make sure that we address the string parameter.
That's right.
So we could begin with the public constructor. So we'll create a public constructor for command clear, where we will take in a string, and we'll name it command name, just to follow standard with with the command class itself. So we'll take in string command name, then we'll call the base constructor and feed it command name. So the base constructor will properly take in the name and assign it to the command name field.
Because if we do not feed this string parameter on up the chain, then we're going to have an error.
And I'm going to leave the brackets empty just because there's nothing we need to add. We just need to call the base constructor.
That's right. Okay, so now let's go ahead and override our process method.
All right. So this will be a public override string, and it's already got process listed, so I'll select that just so we can allow it to drop in the parameters for us. And it's even thrown in an exception for if we were to leave this alone, noting the fact that the operation has
not yet implemented. Yep. All right, very cool.
We're at the part where we implement it, so we can erase that exception and write in our own code for process.
Exactly. Now, what does the clear command need to do? When somebody types in clear, basically it needs to clear the screen like you saw a couple videos back. So, really at this point we could just simply tell it to clear the console.
So it would be a simple matter of saying console.clear.
Beautiful. And that's really it. But what if we wanted to take this a little bit further? What if you wanted to avoid somebody typing clear space fuzzy bear?
There is one thing that hasn't been addressed yet, and that's the fact that the method has a return type.
Oh, that's a good
but isn't
point.
returning. So if we attempt to build,
we are going to get a problem.
We get an error. So I mean, if we want to very quickly make that go away, the simplest thing we could do would be to return blank string.
Yep. All right. Very good. Go ahead and build and show them. All right. Back to what I was saying. Okay. Very good. You know, at this point, this is all completely valid and does indeed work. But what if we wanted to be a little bit more specific? What if we wanted to make sure that somebody only typed in the word clear? But if they typed in clear fuzzy bear or clear my screen, that generates an error because we don't really know how to go about dealing with that argument that they passed in with the clear command. Well, this is quite simple. This is where we can actually take a look at the arguments array to make sure that there was no additional arguments passed in with the command. So let's go ahead and take a look at how we can do that.
Well, we could do that with a simple if statement. Since we have access to arguments, we could make sure that there is no arguments beyond 1. Okay. So basically make sure that the overall number of arguments is less than 2.
Okay.
Because, I mean, obviously we have to have something in arguments in order to get this far into a command.
Exactly.
So if we said that as long as the arguments are less than 2, we know that there's only one command. Or I guess to make even more sense, we'll say is equal to 1. Just make the code make a little bit more sense when read out.
Logically, there's several ways that we can set it up here.
So we can begin an if statement where we check the arguments.length and see if it is equal to 1. If it is indeed equal to 1, we can clear the console, perform the required action. Otherwise, that meant we had an invalid number of arguments. We had some extra word or words following clear.
That's right. Ooh, and this allows us to set something interesting up. How about we go ahead and set up some sort of output variable at the very beginning of this method, and we initialize it to an empty string. And then if we hit this else portion, we populate that variable with some sort of error message. And then when we return that variable.
Right, that allows us to set up a return scenario where we don't have to have additional if statements in order to populate the return value. We can simply create it and, if necessary, fill it later.
Right.
So we could have a string variable called output, and initialize it to a blank string. So that would mimic the behavior here. As a matter of fact, if we fill in return output right away, that means that with no further coding, we return a blank string.
Right.
Only here in the else case, in the error case, we can store a value in output. So we could say output is equal to command requires no parameters.
That's right.
Or let's make it more specific. Clear requires no parameters. And I think that's requires as an I in it.
That looks good.
So that way, if there are parameters fed into clear, we get this error message passed along as the returned output.
It looks pretty good. I can't think of anything else that we need to add here. Let's go ahead and build and make sure that everything builds successfully. And it does. And we will get to the portion where we start putting in the implementation of the command manager itself in just a few minutes so that we can test this out. So this is going to wrap up this video, which was a look at creating our first command.